All right, good morning, folks. How are you doing? I trust you're doing well and probably thinking this is getting boring. Yeah, I can't do anything about that. I'm sorry. So here we are looking at the Algebra 2 IXL Skills M1, 2, and 3. And these are talking about rational exponents, rational fractional exponents. So right here, 3 over 5 is an example of a rational fractional exponent. And if you remember, we've done this before. So we had some number as the base, and then you might have a rational exponent where we said it was p over n, and p stood for power and n stood for index. And so that n goes in the index of a radical, and then you would keep your base of a and to some power p. And so that is how those rational exponents work. So power over index. And so I gave you a little example. And what I want you to know is that you can use your calculator for all of these things. You have a calculator, you can use your calculator. I walked you through how I would evaluate, for instance, 32 to the 3/5 power. So again, this is power over index. And you can see we put the index in the little radicand there, the base of 32, and then we had to the third power. So again, power index. And what we do is we usually want to evaluate inside the radical first. So the 5th root of 32 is 2. And that's because 2 to the 5th power equals 32. So because we know 2 to the 5th power, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 equals 32, then I can say that the 5th root of 32 is 2. So the 5th root of 32 equals 2. So I have a power and I have a root, and they undo one another. So the 5th root of 32 gives me back the base of 2. And then we would take that to the third power. Well, the beauty here is that you have a calculator and it knows how to do this for you. So however you want to do this, it's your choice. I'm in my math menu and I'm going to clear this, and we can just type in my calculator. I'm going to make sure I do 32. Actually, you don't need the parentheses there. 32 caret. You do need 3 divided by 5 in parentheses in your calculator. So 32 caret to the 3 divided by 5 in my calculator. And you can see I get 8. And that's on the Casio. And again, so please make sure you put parentheses around that exponent. And that's just to make sure that you're telling the calculator, hey, you need to remember that 3 divided by 5 is all up in the exponent position. You have to tell this calculator what is in fact in the exponent position. This TI, a newer TI, if you type in 32 and then use the little caret, you can't see that. Use the little caret button here. That's the power up button right there. So, and you can see how it redoes the typing. So it actually, you can see it's already in the exponent. It's way up high. And again, you can get 8. So the two different calculators show it a little bit differently. It's really important that you know how to do those correctly. We're also using some properties of exponents, again, which we have done so many times from the very, very beginning of the year up until now. When we have the same base, we are allowed to add the exponents. So here we would get x to the 3 plus 5. 3 plus 5 is 8. And that's in a product. So that's the product property, allows us to add the exponents. And that's true whether they're integers like these numbers, or if they're rational numbers like 3/5. So it doesn't matter if we have a 3 or a 5 or a -2 or a 3/5. The same rule applies. We just get to add the exponents. In a division problem, in a quotient, we get to subtract the exponents. And we would do top minus the bottom. So 3 minus 7 gives me a -4. And you do need to simplify carefully. Negative exponents, remember, negative exponents are unhappy where they are currently, so they like to drop down into a denominator, or vice versa. They could pull up from a denominator into a numerator as well. So he's unhappy right up here in the numerator, so we want to shift the whole thing down to a denominator. So remember, negative exponents, we want to change their position. Okay? And those are just a few quick reminders, but again, almost all of this stuff you can use your calculator. So have your calculator handy. Simplify example 1. And when you're doing these things, you do need to make sure you have positive exponents when you're done. Okay, so your IXL does not want negative exponents. So first of all, I could rewrite this if I wanted to. This is power over index, so this would be the 4th root of 256 all to the 5th power. And I could do it by hand. The 4th root of 256, I think it's 4. 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. I don't know. Let me check. 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 is 256. So that means I have a group of 4 of them, so 1 escapes. The 4th root of 256 is 4. And then I would take that to the 5th power, and I have no idea what that is. So 4 to the 5th power is 1024. Not something I remembered. So you could do it by hand, but it's really just not necessary. Your calculators are totally capable of doing this pretty easily. I'm going to use the Casio because it's just a little harder. 256 caret. Again, that's the power up feature. And so we're going to make sure we tell it 5 divided by 4. And you'll notice I put that in parentheses. You have to do that. Otherwise, you're not going to get the right answer. And you can see we do get 1024. So whether you want to take the time to work through the math or use your calculator, that's your choice. I'm going to just keep using the calculator. Here again, I'm just going to type it in almost exactly and make sure I put the 1/3 in parentheses. So I also need this -27 in parentheses. Let's see what happens. To the 1 divided by 3 power. Let's see that, there we go. So you can see -27 to the 1 divided by 3 power, and I get -3, which is wonderful. And then we have 64. So again, 64 to the, and I'm going to the -1/3 power. Again, this is a negative exponent, so it wants to turn it into a fraction. Let's see what it gives me. Ooh, decimal. Okay, your math program is not going to accept that. But it's okay. It's a wonderful answer. 0.25 is 1/4, and you can math frac that or do the fraction decimal button. So just convert that to a fraction, and you can see that it's 1/4, which is the answer that your IXL program will be looking for. You can do the same thing on the TI, just so you can compare 64 to the -1/3. On the TI looks like that. And we push enter, you can see it also gave us the decimal 0.25, and that is not acceptable. So we're going to math and then convert to a fraction. Math frac it, our favorite button. You need to use math frac all the time. So keep those calculators handy. Now simplify. The nice thing is we are assuming that all the variables are positive. So when you get to variable mode down here, it's fine. You will have to type in the variables. So first of all, these do not have any variables. And so I think the easiest thing to do, again, if it's all numbers, use your calc. Okay, so use your calculator. It'll work these things out for you really nicely. And it's just the path of least resistance here is sort of what we're going for. So I'm going to type in 4 to the 1 divided by 3. And so again, you have to know how to type this in if you're going to get the right answer. times 16 to the 1 divided by 3. And we get 4. Nice and easy. All right. Here we have some negative exponents. So again, we might get decimal answers. So we just want to make sure we convert to a fraction. So I'm going to go ahead and type this in, 108 to the negative 2 divided by 3 power times 2 to the, again with the parentheses, negative 2 divided by 3 power. So again, this is just the easiest way, and it all involves knowing how to use your calculator. And I get this crazy decimal, 0.02777, which probably repeats forever, and your IXL is not going to accept that. So we're going to do our fraction decimal or math frac just to turn it into a fraction, because if it repeats, it is a fraction. So I'm going to convert it using my fraction decimal button right there, FD fraction decimal, and you can see that it is 1/36, and that is a great answer for IXL. Just so you can see that on the TI, negative 2/3, a little easier to type in, times 2 to the negative 2/3. Again, crazy decimal, and we were just going to math frac that. Math frac. Again, we get 1/36. So use those calculators. Need to know how to use them. All right. Now, since these have variables, we cannot use a calculator for all of it. We can definitely use our calculator for some of it. But we want to look to our properties. And since it's a product here, they have the same base. If they have the same base, we're going to keep the base and do what with the exponents? They have the same base, so we add the exponents together. And the nice thing is we can use our calculators to do that. Now, 4/3 plus 7/3 is 11/3. So that was really, really an easy one. But maybe you didn't know that. They already had a common denominator, but we could do 4/3 plus 7/3. 4 divided by 3 plus 7 divided by 3. And again, we get a crazy decimal, and all you need to do is convert it to a fraction, 11/3. So that was really easy. So you can still use your calculator. And this is totally fine. This is what we would put in to IXL. So you literally have to type the X and then use the little exponent button that you'll see on there and type in 11/3, 11 divided by 3. So you are going to add those exponents. Now the same thing down here, we have the variable C, and they have the same base, and so we need to keep the base. It does not change. It does not become C squared. It does not become 2C. We keep the C. That's it. Here, just like here, we kept the X. And same thing now, if they have the same base, then we get to add our exponents. So we're going to add these exponents together. Now, 1/9 plus 5/12, gross. I don't want to do that. So I am going to use my calculator. 1/9 plus 5/12. 1/9, 1 divided by 9 plus 5 divided by 12. And I'm going to go ahead and get a crazy decimal. That's 0.527777. Again, decimal's not okay. Convert to a fraction, so use your fraction decimal button. So easy. We get C to the 19/36. The nice thing about this is it's going to reduce those fractions for you, and that's really, really important. If we had gotten 12/3, we would want to reduce. And these, when you use your calculator and convert to a fraction, it's always going to be in reduced form already. So just make sure you reduce your fractions if necessary, okay? So 12 divided by 4 is 3. Don't leave it 12/4. All right? Now, that was when we have a product, we get to add our exponents. And so the last skill is when we have a quotient. And again, it's going to appear in a couple of different forms. So we are dividing here. Again, our variables are positive, which is nice. We don't have to work too hard. And again, the important thing to look at here is these have the same base. If they don't have the same base, these properties do not work. They have the same base, so you're going to keep your base. And it always, if you are doing this, when you use the rule, it's always in a numerator. So you can see I put b divided by 1. So this b is in the numerator. And then we subtract our exponents. So we would do 9/4 subtract 11/4, top minus the bottom. So 9/4 minus 11/4, that, again, that's a nice one. 9 minus 11 is -2/4. And since they had a common denominator, that was really, really easy. And 2 divided by 4, we can reduce that. We can divide top and bottom by 2, so we get -1/2. And the negative exponent is going to drop it down into a denominator. So you can see it was up here in numerator land, and it wants to drop down into a denominator. So we would get 1 over b to the 1/2 power. And that's very, very good. We cannot have negative exponents in our final answer. So this is the answer that I would put in to our IXL program. And again, you could use your calculator if you wanted to, but we can't put in b's on our calculators. It doesn't work. So we can do the math part with the fraction. So 9/4 minus 11/4. And you can see we get -0.5. Well, I'm going to math frac that. So math frac it, and you can see we get -1/2. And know that you can't, this is no good for IXL. You need to make sure that you have positive exponents. So that negative exponent says, hey, move me down into the denominator. So pay close attention to that. Now, this is the same thing, except instead of using a quotient bar, they're using the division symbol. So it's really the same thing. U to the 3/5 divided by U to the 5/2. So now it's the same kind of problem. They have the same base. So we keep the base, and we're going to subtract our exponents. Top minus bottom. 3/5 minus 5/2. And again, those are kind of yucky denominators, so I'm going to use my calculator and just go ahead and type that in. So we have 3/5 minus 5/2. Be careful. Take your time. It really pays in IXL to go slow and make sure everything is correct so that you don't have to do as many problems. Ooh, and that gave me a decimal. So again, we want to convert that to fraction. So do the math frac thing or do fraction decimal. And so we get u to the -19/10. Again, that fraction is reduced, but what's the problem? We have a negative exponent, and that says, hey, send me down to denominator land. So we do 1 over u to the 19/10. When you move it to the denominator, then the exponent will turn positive for you. So it's now happy down here on the first story instead of the second story. Sorry, I have weird stories here. Again, when we use the subtraction rule, everything is always in the numerator first, and then maybe we need to move it. Only if it's a negative exponent, though. So this is what I would type in to IXL. And then again, we are dividing. So if you want to rewrite the problem to something that looks more familiar, then that's fine. They have the same base, so I'm going to keep the base the same, and we're going to subtract. Top exponent minus the bottom exponent. Be careful. You'll notice we are subtracting a negative 1/3, which your calculator is really good at. So take your time. So the only thing I can do is the numbers. You can't do letters on your calculator, except when you're graphing. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and type in -7/6 minus a -1/3. And of course, if you want to just change minus the negative to plus, that's fine as well. And we get -0.83333, which again is no good. So we're going to math frac that, or fraction decimal, convert it to a fraction, and we get b to the -5/6. Now again, that's a great final fraction there, but it has a negative exponent, and IXL does not want that. So it says, hey, shift me down, move me down to the denominator where I am much happier. So we get 1/b to the 5/6, and that's a great answer to put in IXL. All right, so I think the rule here is today, use your calculators, and take your time, and make sure you're making your exponents positive for your final answer. We need positive exponents, and reduce your fractions always, and your calculator is really good at fractions. So again, learn to use those calculators. They are a powerful tool, but only if you know how to use them. Thanks, folks.